Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Timeless. So something it never really crossed my mind. I don't know why it didn't automatically. I mean, you could see it at the end of the episode, but the whole thing between Lucy and her fiance. I can't believe it took me a while to realize, like, hey, like, how uncomfortable that's got to be. Like, someone you don't really know, someone that kind of knows you, but you don't really know them, is kissing on you and everything, which you saw the awkward look on her face, but just kind of like there's this person touching you and caressing you, and it's like you know next to nothing about it. Like, because I don't know, because there's that part of my brain that's kind of like, I'd probably go with it, because it's like, because there's probably like some deep-seated need for love to be like, oh, please love me. Oh, like, there's a hot woman here wanting to, like, you know, be with me. It's like, oh, we've had this great relationship that I know nothing about. Oh, well, I guess I'm just going to study up on a relationship, which she does, but, you know, that's me. I'm saying that jokingly. I'm not 100% serious, though. There's a part of my brain that is kind of serious about that. But I can understand where she's coming from, just being uncomfortable. It's like someone you don't know. It's like sleeping in a bed with a stranger, you know? But she tries going through, like, an album of just all these different memories and trying to feign, like, oh, yeah, I know about, oh, yeah, the beach, it was amazing. It's also where I proposed to you. And it's like, oh, look what I found in the bathroom, your engagement ring. It's like, oh, yeah, he's about to kiss me. Oh, God, oh, thank God, work is calling. I got to take this call. So what I really liked about this episode was where they ended up going back in time to, which was, well, really quickly before I get to that, I don't know for sure. I didn't bother looking up, but isn't that the same actor? Okay, this is going to get really convoluted when I'm saying this. Essentially, there was a show called Witches at East End, or of East End. It was a Element, not Element, maybe Element. It was like a Lifetime original series. It was basically about witches and whatnot. And isn't her fiance one of the brothers in it? So one of the main protagonists was played by Jenna Dewan Tatum, and not the person that she was, not her, like, initially at the beginning of the series, she had a fiance, her fiance's brother, who she ended up kind of developing feelings for. Wasn't that same actor? Like I said, I know it's extremely convoluted, but I think that was him. It's been such a long time since I've seen this series, I don't remember any characters' names, but it just clicked in my head. I was like, oh, he kind of looks familiar now that I'm looking at him a little bit more. But nevertheless, getting back to the main point of the episode, went back to 1962, in particular Nevada. It's like, wait, there's a whole bunch of people in Las Vegas at this particular hotel. It's like, oh, Kennedy's here. Well, specifically John F. K. You know, because there's a whole bunch of Kennedys. But John F. Kennedy, and there's also a bunch of celebrities here who could be going after. Could they be trying to kill John F. Kennedy like a year earlier? Well, it turns out not to be the case. The real target is a lady named Judith, who is essentially one of John F. She was John F. Kennedy's mistress. She was basically his mistress, as well as kind of to be a mistress of, like, a gangster that, you know, John F. Kennedy had connections to. Apparently there was someone that Kennedy was trying to get whacked, that he used this particular guy to try and do it, and she was kind of there in between to kind of pass the messages along, because, you know, him being a president and everything, it's like, can't have direct ties to mobster and whatnot, so kind of had someone else kind of talk in their place. But it was really interesting because, you know, because she had a conversation with Lucy. She was kind of like, oh, I see the way you look at me. Kind of like, basically, like, I know how most people look at me as like a whore, a home wrecker. But Lucy was like, no, I find you fascinating because you are a lady, especially in this period of time, trying to kind of take life in your own hand. It's like, I mean, that's really saying something. Like, you are literally in the epicenter of, like, two of the most powerful men at the time, a powerful mobster and the president. And, like, you know, you play a key role in what goes down. Like, you kind of help push things along in history. So it's not like she was just a nobody, you know. I mean, but it was kind of interesting what her character kind of presented in this episode, because she kind of she and Lucy ended up having a very interesting conversation about, you know, life. It's like, did she ever think, you know, life would take the direction it did? It's like, no, until she met JFK, it's like, you know, things kind of changed for her. She kind of felt something a little more, just life kind of took a different spin. It's like, hey, you know, was asking Lucy, have you ever woken up to find your life is completely different? And she's like, yeah, actually I have. And it's like, you know, Lucy ended up asking the question, would you ever go back to your original life? And she said, and Judith said, no, because there will always be a part of her. Like, it's fine and dandy. Like, the original life she had was nice and safe, but there will always be a part of her brain that's like, hey, what could have been? What am I missing out on? You know? And that's kind of the thing, you know, Lucy didn't really follow through with that same logic later on in the episode, which is, it kind of makes sense because, I mean, you know, everyone thought so. Rufus as well as Lucy kind of thought she had it all together. It's like, you know, that things were going to work out for her because she had her life in order. She knew what she wanted to do. I mean, really the whole situation about kind of being blackmailed by Flynn to kind of get access to like that nuclear core, which I'll get to that later on. But the fact of the matter is she double crossed Rufus, Wyatt, and then like even when Wyatt was there trying to protect her, but it's like, no, Judith kind of betrayed them, double crossed them just because she was like make it to ensure that she got the pictures back. But it wasn't necessarily just for JFK's, you know, sake, because you know, originally she was like trying to keep that away, the information low key, because it would like interfere with his chances of getting, his presidency. Like it would kind of interfere with that. But really she did it for herself, because it's like at the end of the day, no matter who you surround yourself with, no matter whatever kind of life you lead, the only person you have is yourself at the end of the day. So you have to look out for yourself. It's really sad when Lucy actually tells you, it's like, oh, what actually happened to her. And it's like, basically what happened to her ends up getting kind of like tossed out there anyway. The public ends up finding out about it and kind of rips her apart. She kind of becomes a pariah. And sadly, it just ends up dying of cancer. It sucks, Like I brought up earlier, because even Rufus said, he's like, oh, I thought she had it together. But Wyatt was like, no one ever has it together. People can pretend like they do, act like they do, but they don't. And I think that's in itself is kind of what I was mentioning earlier about the fact is that Lucy was like talking to her fiance and basically being like, she thought, Judith had it all under control. So it's like, she wouldn't have to worry about the what ifs. She kind of goes with the flow and accept this new exciting thing in her life, because it's like, oh, everything's under control. But Lucy ended up figuring out no one has anything under control. So it's like, try to taking her life in her own hands. She's not going to let this current timeline play itself out. It's like she could easily sit there, fit the role, become the Lucy that she's supposed to be in this particular timeline, but she can't. Like, she has to go out and kind of figure out what she wants to do with this life, because there's no telling if she'll ever be able to reset time, because they're definitely not going to let her go back in time to try and fix that whole Hindenburg situation. I mean, whole paradox situation is scary enough already, but even then it's like they're not going to let her do that, because she doesn't have control on whether they go. Like, they have to go where Flynn goes. So, you know what I mean? So there's no guarantee she'll ever get that life back, but she does have this life here. So she has to kind of decide what she wants to do with it. And that's kind of scary to think about it. It's like, I was about to make a comparison to every other, other shows, but I'm going to stop doing that, just because I'm watching so much other stuff that deals with time travels, alternate timelines and stuff like that. But I'm going to focus it entirely on this. And so it does bring up that question of, what will she do? I mean, she doesn't know, so she's got to take time to figure that out. She's pulling away from her fiance, but her fiance is not willing to give up on her. He's like, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Give you as much time as you need. I will just know that I'll be here waiting for you, which is very supportive. But I won't lie, there's a pessimistic part of my brain, because I'm suspicious of everyone. I'm like, the fact is that he's in your life is because he's connected in all this in some shape or form. I feel like that's going to be the twist. Or maybe he just happens to legitimately be a good guy. Maybe he's just a piece of the puzzle, just like in many different ways her life has changed. I'm very curious to know what her mom is going to say about it, because her mom is going to say, oh, Lucy, you've been acting weird lately, so different. Asking about your dad, calling off an engagement, like, what's going on? Something's going on here. Especially because, like, Lucy's saying, like, she's doing stuff for work, but it's like, she can't tell anybody that she's working with the government on a secret project like this, so I'm assuming her mom's going to eventually find out. It's like, oh, you're not actually at, school teaching or whatever. What are you doing? You're sitting here lying, and eventually probably turns into an intervention type of thing. That's like, oh, you maybe end up catching her with Wyatt or Rufus, and it's like, oh, you're having an affair or something like that. Just something scandalous, just because it's like, with this whole situation, secrets tend to kind of come out. Not necessarily the secrets that you're hiding, but when you hide secrets, it's like people kind of tend to draw their own conclusions by what's in front of them. They just kind of think the worst. So I feel like that's when it's going to go that route. And also interesting in this episode is how Rufus kind of has to deal with the whole Anthony situation, a scientist who ended up getting kidnapped. I don't know the actor's name. I will constantly refer to him as Taggart from Eureka, or Dr. Leakey from Orphan Black. But Anthony, basically Mason kind of brought it up in the beginning of the episode. He's like, Anthony is totally a traitor. It's like, not totally, but he has his suspicions, and he's like, it's very suspicious that, Flynn happened to get in here and like without, getting past all the security and stuff like that. But Rufus didn't want to believe it, but sadly it ended up being true. Especially, even more so because at the end of the episode, it's like Rufus thought he got the core back from him, but it was like, nope, he played you. Which is kind of interesting seeing how they played that out, because I was wondering what that hole was for. I thought the hole was going to be for Judith, but it turned out not to be. It was just, they dug up the core, they pretended like the core was in a suitcase, but really they buried it in a oil drum and, got it out and dug it back up in the present. But, you have Rufus being there asking the question of why. The fact is Anthony cares a lot about his family, wife and child, but it's like, why would he be working with someone like Flynn? And you hear a little bit in their conversation. The fact is that, Flynn is like, we have to do what we have to do, essentially this all ties back into Rittenhouse, like whatever the hell that is, or particularly whoever the hell that is, they need to stop that thing or person. And, in Anthony's words, it's all an means to an end. That, like, he doesn't want good people to die, but, Flynn is like, if it means setting things right and getting rid of Rittenhouse, then I'm fine with there has to be some casualties. We're at war here. Because another interesting thing is, Lucy has yet to tell anyone. It was like, yeah, he's actually following a journal that apparently he got from me and at some point in the future. So, I mean, granted, I guess I understand why she's reluctant to tell anyone, because she might be thinking it's total BS. But I mean, he's kind of referenced it twice already, like, we work together, so why are you fighting me on this? Just stay out of my way and accept the reality that eventually down the road we're going to work together. Like I said, I don't see how that's going to happen, because, like, Lucy's so uptight about keeping the timeline the same. It's because, like, time works this one way, and it's like things played out this way, and it's like we have to leave them to kind of work out that way. And, it once again kind of brings her and Wyatt at odds. Because, Wyatt comes at this situation from a soldier point of view. Like, for instance, the whole Judith situation. He wanted to use Judith as bait. Lucy wasn't okay with that. But it's like, as a soldier, he's like, his job is there to get Flynn. As he was talking with Rufus later on, it's like, he gets his target. He's told when to do it, who to take down. But it's like, why he's taking that person down, it doesn't matter. He follows his orders. But once again, Rufus is like, but the point is, why is very important, because it lets us know whether we're actually the good guys or not. And it's kind of, in this whole situation, it's kind of hard to say whether they really are or not, because it's like, at the end of the day, you have to bring up the question, what did Mason and his people want to use time travel for? I mean, yes, you could say like, oh yeah, obviously just everyone aims for wanting to create time travel. But the fact of the matter is, there are two particular pods they made for time travel. I mean, granted, the lifeboat that they're currently using was just kind of like a prototype original, but and the one that Flynn has is a more recent, more concrete version, I guess. So, but it still brings up the question, what do they want time travel for? Especially because they have some kind of connection. In particular, Mason has some kind of connection to Rittenhouse, and in some shape or form, Rufus does too. I mean, more so Rufus is kind of in this whole situation because he's kind of indebted to the whole situation, because it's like they helped kind of put him in the position that he's in right now, kind of helped him get away from kind of the rough start life he had. So we got a little bit more insight into Wyatt a little bit. We ended up finding out that basically his wife went missing at first, and then she popped up a little bit later, found dead. And in this episode, he tried to actually leave a telegram or something for her, leaving some kind of message. It's like, okay, you can deliver this, like 2012. It's like, really? What? Well, why? Just tell me, can you do it? And they're like, they can. And basically they're saying, like, no matter what, let Wyatt drive you home. Don't go off on your own. Like, even though you're pissed at him, I get it. Just know that he loves you, and he always will, trying to set things right. And then, having a whole conversation with Lucy about what's fate and what's not. Wyatt doesn't believe anything is fate. There's no fate. Yes, Lucy's there to make sure time stays the same, because, as we can see, time changing kind of screwed her over. Kind of, her sister no longer exists. Granted, her mom is alive and she has a fiance, but still, that's her, that's her sister. The person that she remembers so vividly no longer exists, just popped out of existence now. Doesn't exist and never existed. So, that's kind of sad. And it's just kind of like, you don't really know what drastic effects, like, they're changing the time like it really have on the world. It could be good effect. You never know how the dominoes will fall, essentially. It could be some good stuff. It could be all good stuff, or it could most likely be all bad stuff, just a pessimist in me. Or it could be like, hey, some few good things come about it, but some really awful bad things came about it. It's like, hey, you look at the situation with the Hindenburg, I'm about to call it the Heisenberg. A little bit of Breaking Bad sneaking in right there. But the Hindenburg, like, only like 2 people died, but I mean, that whole situation was like, yeah, people were saved, but it kind of screwed over Lucy's side. But you get my point. But sadly, even with all that said and done, it still didn't work out for Wyatt. When he came back, nothing had changed. Part of me was expecting, like, the moment he walked out the room, we're going to see Lucy pull out the message and kind of rip it up, or she keeps it or something. Just her just so trying to maintain the timeline. But it seems like that's not the case. So I was about to be worried. I was like, please don't tell me you did that. And it's like, okay, she didn't. So. And finally, just what the hell they're going to do with essentially the core to an atomic bomb. Is like, what you're going to do that for, I don't know. Because it would make you wonder, like, it brings up the question, what would happen if you exploded that while time traveling? Like, what would that do to the timeline? Would that basically hit every point in history all at once type of thing? Like, how far, like, because like I said, we've always used the example of, like, time bending backwards. Kind of almost like a wave shape, a wave kind of connecting upon itself. So how far would that, being able to bend space and time around yourself, like, would that be able, like, when you're doing that, would you be able to bend all of time at once? So, like, saying the core went off, it wiped out everything? Or would it only be able to hit, like, a certain allocated period of times? Like, it's like, oh, like, you can only, like, because of where you're going in time specifically, only these set years, like, between 1960 and 2005 were kind of within your range, so you end up only hitting those particular years, but you hit all of time like that? Or is it just not even those allocated years, just all of time itself, just like across every point in history gets hit? I doubt that's where they're aiming for, because literally that would basically destroy everything. I mean, I'm sure they've got a specific target in mind, but it's like, I really don't see where this is going. And I'm very interested in that. You can hazard some guesses as to where things might be going, but it's like, I'm totally, like, lost, like, where this could all end up in that regard. And really quickly, I kind of want to tag this on at the end, like, a little bit thing. Wyatt had mentioned the fact is, if you knew how my wife died, you'd be, you'd be more willing to be like, hey, let me change history and stuff like that. Which is like, kind of like, what does that mean exactly? Like, was she caught by a serial killer? Was it an accident? Was it on purpose? Like, maybe we actually look at it, what we're going to end up finding out is the fact is that she was kind of a casualty, because what's going to happen is Flynn's going to end up going back in time to that point in time. For what reason, I don't know. And then you have Wyatt, 2016 Wyatt, there in 2012 trying to protect her, but sadly it doesn't work that way. Maybe that's why she disappeared for a period of time, because she was hanging out with 2016 Wyatt and he was trying to keep her safe that entire time, but then she ultimately ended up dying, and that he ended up technically losing her twice. And maybe you could look at it like, hey, Wyatt's the reason why he lost her in the first place, just time traveling and everything. So I don't know, just kind of just popped in my head right now, so I just kind of want to throw that in there. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.